This is what we're talking about when it comes to the NFC playoff picture. The Lions off to their best start since 1934, and the Eagles have now won 7 straight games, sitting at 9-2. So let's talk about two teams on that screen. The one that plays Sunday Night Football. And Peter, in the era of should I go, you went to the game last night.
One of the main reasons I'm here today is because I saw on the schedule that they were having a Sunday night game between the Rams and the Eagles. Said I got to be there. And there's a story that I remember hearing about from Alabama in the mid 2000s about when they get off the bus, they're scary. Being in that building, when the Eagles walked onto the field and there was a giant roar of Eagles fans, sea of green everywhere, and then you go one by one on that list, and you're like, oh gosh, they've got A.J. Brown. Oh my God, that's Saquon Barkley. Oh wait, Jalen Carter's a beast. Like they go player by player, and you're like, okay, off the bus, the Eagles are scary. I spoke to Saquon before the game. I was happy enough to have a credential. Got a chance to talk to him before the game. Locked in, ready to go. And it's one of those things where, like, before the game even started, I was like, okay, the Rams, this is a thing right here. I didn't realize it on television, but in person, this is a thing. And the Rams, they might be in a bit of trouble. We go to halftime, and the Rams trot out the 99 Rams Super Bowl team. Now, look, they're from St. Louis. They're not from L.A. It's not exactly the same thing as, like, an L.A. team that's coming here. But still, you had Kurt, you had Marshall, you had Torrey. They're doing the whole thing with the ball. And then the band Smash Mouth is performing because it was 99, so they wanted to get – it was a festive scene. And then right away, Saquon, the first play, like Kyle said, of the second half, boom, touchdown, takes your throat, takes your momentum, and completely rips it off. This is it. When you do this to start a half and make it a 2-score game, you're telling everybody in the audience, go home, warm up the buses. And yet he wasn't done. This is the Saquon game. 255 yards, 2 touchdowns, and it's the single game record for the Eagles, obviously, but he almost broke the NFL record, which is 296. To give it the full effect, and Kyle's highlight was awesome, let's relive it. This was Mike Tirico playing hurt last night with a torn Achilles. Unbelievable, Mike. Let's listen to Saquon Barkley's touchdown from the wonderful voice of Mike Tirico.
He's 6 yards shy of a career high for rushing yards, and he's got it, and he's got more, and he's gonna go all the way. What a night, what a season, what a player. 255 rushing yards, and his second 70-plus yard touchdown run.
And it only gets better. Look, we're talking about the Lions all week. Okay, guys, what does this all have in common here? At Ravens, home versus Panthers, home versus Steelers, at Command. They do not have to get on a plane the rest of the season.
Wow.
That is a train ride to Baltimore, and that is a train ride to Washington, and that is all home. Don't be booking your tickets for the Lions as the 1 seed just yet. The Eagles might have something to say about this. That is a very doable schedule to win out. And typically, when you're a 2-loss team in a conference, you find yourself hosting the NFC Championship game. So Eagles, they're just getting started. Last night might have been a statement game for Saquon and for their team as a whole. But being in the building, I felt it. It feels special also. There are those intangibles. And I got to tell you, I'm waking up a convert. I think the Eagles might be the team to watch in the NFC.
Wow.
Awesome.
He turned into a convert. Okay. I'm not quite ready to go to become a convert yet, but I felt all of that energy that you had. I felt it through the television. You could feel the energy and the shift. But, you know, we saw Saquon do his thing. But the other thing that was happening was just kind of a thing in this game was that defensive front. That defense was balling. I mean, they were just manhandling people. And especially when you think about Brandon Graham. Brandon Graham, he came out, had a massive performance out there, 2 tackles, a sack, a tackle for a loss. But there was the other lineman as well.
Brandon Graham goes down with the injury.
With the injury, that's right. He does tear his tricep. And, of course, he was already saying that this is going to be perhaps his last season. If this is the way he goes out, if, in fact, this is, what a great way to go out because he's played like an absolute boss. Milton Williams was out there balling. It was, to me, like not only Milton Williams, but also Jalen Carter. Those guys had 11 quarterback hits. They were constantly in front of, Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford didn't have a chance to try to orchestrate some sort of comeback because he was being harassed constantly. I just absolutely think that if the Eagles are going to go far, it's also going to be because that defense is, I mean, they can play and they are some ballers.
Vic Fangio. That's the name that everybody needs to be talking about right now.
Everyone's talking Saquon. You want to talk Vic Fangio?
Everybody's talking to Saquon, and obviously Kellen Moore's not getting the flowers that he needs for setting up this offense the way that they are. But Vic Fangio is the man that I want to put attention to. You just alluded to some of the guys on the defensive side of the ball. Yes, he has all the dogs on defense. They have invested a lot into their front seven. Specifically, you talk about Big Davis. I call him Big Baby Davis. Okay, so Big Jordan Davis, obviously Jalen Carter. Okay, obviously a shout out to BG right there. I talked to him last night. So, yeah, I talked to him last night, man. He said, now I get to lead from the sideline. So, you know, a shout out to him and what he's done. If that was his last game, he went out on his sword for sure. But these guys are taking care of business. These guys there was 9 possessions, okay, for the Rams. Of those 9 possessions, there was 3 scores, 4 punts, and 1 turnover. These guys were on their tail. Matthew Stafford was never able to establish himself as being comfortable in the backfield. Yeah, Puka Nacua got off because that's what he does, right? But other than that, these guys didn't have any breathing room. This defense was all on their head. 11 quarterback hurries, 4 sacks, 7 passes deflected, and 8 TFLs. They lived in the backfield, whether it was in the pass or whether it's in the run game. And as long as that defense continues playing like that and they can tote the rock on the ground like that, this is a very dangerous team.
Yeah, they showed why they're the number 1 defense.
It is dangerous. I love that Peter's big fancy night in Los Angeles is hanging out with Oz Hakeem and Smash Mouth. Yeah. Peter, never change. That's you, buddy. That's you. I love it.
Hey, now, I'm an all-star.
Shape of an L on their forehead for the Rams. Listen, I predicted at the beginning of the season that Josh Allen would win MVP, and maybe he will. That's who I think will win it at the beginning of the season. I want Saquon to win it. I want to break the deal here. I don't want to have quarterbacks every single year. Guys, let's get into the superlatives. Over the last 2 games, he has 500 total yards. Only 3 players ever to do it in back-to-back games. Walter Payton is one of them. He has 2 touchdowns over 70 yards. Only 6 players have ever done it, including Barry Sanders. MJD was the last one. He is the only player ever with 2 70-yard TDs in the second half. I think he has the story, guys. He's getting the stats. Everyone says, well, Derrick Henry had 2,000 yards and he didn't win the MVP. He could never do it then. Saquon, if Derrick Henry couldn't do it, Saquon can't. Yes, he can. Derrick Henry did not have the story. He did not have the freshness on a new team. It was a different deal completely. But here's the story. Forget Saquon Barkley, the MVP. To have a running back get the MVP in 2024, he's going to have to run a perfect campaign. There can be no slip-ups. Last night, national television, check. Now, at the Ravens late window, check. They play the Panthers. That won't do much for them. At Washington, got to do that. Home versus Dallas is going to be the last stop of the campaign tour where they just empty the bag and try to get to all the voters, because I think that home versus Dallas, I think Sirianni has the potential to do what the Spurs did with David Robinson. When David Robinson scored 71 points on the final game of the season to get the scoring title, Sirianni would be like, screw it. Let's get Saquon 6 touchdowns and get him the MVP. I just remember it's not all about handing it to the quarterback with the best stats. Last year, they gave it to Lamar. Even though his stats weren't great, he was the best player on the best team. There is a case for Saquon there. He is a shooting star, and only shooting stars break the mold in MVP talk. I want Saquon to do it. And last night was step 1. But we got to run a perfect campaign, and I think it can be done.
I'm watching it last night, and it's like you have Saquon, who's already jilted from the Giants, letting him walk out the building, and the running back market being depreciated. Then you've got an offensive line who heard all summer that Jason Kelsey was leaving, so they're not going to be the same. Then you got Jalen Hurts, who lost 6 of the last 7 games last year, and everyone says he's not. This team was in the Super Bowl 2 years ago, and they've got the rare advantage of being like nobody believed in us. And they were that good, and they were a playoff team last year. They play with such edge, and a lot of that, it rubs them wrong. Like, Sirianni is not everyone's favorite coach around the league because of his – and even when he trotted out the team, called on, and then he brought out then they went for it anyway. Like that whole thing with the 3rd and 4th down conversion. It's not beloved around the league. Okay. That's Philly in a nutshell. And gosh, can't stress it enough. Did that fan base travel last night?